Hello, today we will start with the genetics, chapter 11. The first lesson, the work of Gregor Mendel. We need to understand the genetics, how the genes will vary between the generation, how the genes will be passed from one generation to other, how your characteristics come from your parents or from your grandparents. So at the end of this chapter, you will be able to understand from about all of the characteristics that you have from where it's come, okay? And how is the percent of getting one characteristic from your parents, okay? For my objective today, I need you to describe Mendel's studies and conclusions about inheritance. The first work done by Mendel, which is the experiments of Gregor Mendel on the peas, okay? So in the beginning, where does an organism get its unique characteristics as a human? From where you will get your unique characteristic, from where you get your appearance, your skin color, your hair color, your eye color, all of your characteristics, from where you get all of these characteristics. The right answer is an individual's characteristics are determined by factors that are passed from one parental generation to the next, from one parental generation to the next. Every living thing has a set of characteristics inherited from one of parent or two parents. Gregor Mendel, an Australian monk, founded genetics, and he studies the heredity, which is the key to understand what makes each organism unique. He works in garden peas, which is small and easy, and at the same time, he works in single plants can produce hundreds of offsprings. Let's start with the rule of fertilization. During sexual reproduction, male and female reproductive cells join in a process known as a fertilization to produce a new cell. In peas, this new cell develops into tiny embryo encased within a seed. So there is a seed and the embryo encased by the seed. Pea flowers are normally self-pollinating. What do you mean by self-pollinating? Which means that the sperm cells fertilize egg cells from within the same flower. So it is an asexual reproduction. Again, bee flowers are normally self-pollinating. What do you mean by self-pollinating? Which is mean that sperm cells fertilize egg cells from within the same flower, what we call it asexual fertilization or reproduction. A plant grows from a seed produced by self-pollination, inherits all of its characteristics from the single plant that bore it. In effect, it has a single parent. That's what we mean by a single parent, which is self-pollination or asexual reproduction. Mendel's garden have several stocks of pea plants that were true breeding, meaning that they were self-pollinating and would produce offspring with identical traits to themselves. So, self-pollination, asexual reproduction. A trait, what do you mean by a trait? A trait is a specific characteristics of an individual, such as seed color, plant height, and may vary from one individual to other. So again, a trait is a specific characteristic of an individual, such as seed color, plant height, and so on, which is vary from one individual to the other. Mendel, he decided to cross his stocks of true breeding plant, and he used one plant to reproduce with another plant. So he works against self-pollination. So in his experiment, he make a cross-pollination. What do you mean by cross-pollination? Produced a plant that has two different parents. What we mean by it? He will remove one of the plant's parts, like either the male part or the female part, and then he will transport the pollen from one plant to another plant. That's what we mean by cross-pollination, which is opposite to the self-pollination. Allows Mendel to breed plant with a trait different from those of their parent. So the traits here is different from the traits here, and the resulted offspring will share the traits from both parents. Studies even different traits of pea plant like color, size, shape of the seed, of the flower, and even to the plant itself. The offspring of crosses between parents with different traits are called hybrid. So you need to know what you mean by hybrid, which is the offspring of the crosses between parents with a different trait. This is the traits that Mendel studied in the pea plant. Okay, when doing genetic crosses, we call the original pair of plants the bee. So this is B for parental, yeah. And their offsprings are called F1, which is first filial generation or first generation. F1, first generation or first filial generation, and B for the parental. Mendel studied 7 traits. So seed shape, seed color, seed coat, bud shape, bud color, flower position, and plant height. All of these characteristics, the 7 characteristics, Mendel studied. For the seed shape, there were 2 shapes, either rounded or wrinkled. Color, either yellow or green. And the seed coat, either gray or white. Bud shape, smooth or constricted. Bud color, green or yellow. Flower position, axial or terminal. And plant height, tall or short. Okay? When we mate rounded seed shape with wrinkled, the F1 should be round. And he found the F1 is round. Here yellow, here gray, and so on. Mendel drew 2 conclusions. Okay? After the end of his experiment, he drew 2 conclusions. His first conclusion formed the basis of our current understanding of inheritance, which is each of the traits Mendel studied was controlled by 1 gene that occurred in 2 constricting varieties, and these gene variations produced different expressions or forms of each trait. The different form of a gene are called allele. You have to memorize this point and you have to understand this point. The different forms of a gene are called alleles, okay? So the first part of his conclusion, and individual characteristics are determined by factors that are passed from one parental generation to the next, and the second one is scientists call the factors that are passed from one parent to offsprings as a gene. And the second conclusion, which is the principle of dominance. So the second conclusion is the principle of dominance. What do you mean by dominance? Okay? The dominance states that some allele are dominant and other are recessive. What do we mean by dominant? Dominant, it will take the it will present its characteristic, okay? While the recessive, it will hide its characteristics. Organisms with at least one dominant allele for a particular trait will exhibit that form of the trait, and the recessive allele for a particular trait will exhibit that form only when the dominant allele not present. So, if there is one allele for the dominant, then the dominant will present itself. If there is 2 allele of the recessive, then the recessive will be expressed. If there is just one recessive, it will not be expressed. The dominant will take the expression site. Here, round versus wrinkled, the round will be expressed. Yellow versus green, the yellow will be expressed. That means the round is a dominant, while the wrinkled is recessive. And it's all about tall and short also. Tall is dominant and short is recessive. Segregation. What do you mean by segregation, which is the second law of Mendel? How are different forms of gene distributed to offsprings? We need to know how the genes will be distributed to the offsprings. Which offspring will take this gene and which offspring will take the other gene. During gamete formation, the alleles for each gene segregate from each other so that each gamete carries only one allele for each gene. As we know, this is the tallness gene, T capital, T capital. This is dominant and this is dominant. This is gene. This is allele, and this is here allele. So now I have 2 alleles for one gene. The principle of segregation means that I will have to separate these two alleles from each other to form two gametes. I will take the first here, T, this is the first gamete, and I will take the other here. This is the second gamete to form gametes. So this is the two gametes will be formed by the principle of segregation. Again, this is T capital, T capital. By the principle of segregation, we will form two gametes, each with one allele. Two gametes, each with one allele. Here we have two similar dominant alleles. What will happen if we have two different alleles, like T capital, T small? Once we act and we form the segregation, the two alleles will be separated to form T capital, T small, two different gametes. Okay, this is the law of segregation. Did you understand that? Is it clear for all of you? That's great. Let's start with the experiment of Mendel. He wanted to find out what had happened to the recessive allele. What will happen to the shortness here once he made the parent together to form the F1 generation. So he make an F2. So he hybridized the two offsprings here in F1 generation to found the F2 generation. Okay, and once he did this, he found that the shortness allele will appear again, and that means the recessive allele will not disappear. It will stay, but it's covered by the dominancy. The allele for all tall plants was dominant, and the allele for short plant was recessive, and was the recessive allele for the shortest loss in the F1 generation. It will not be lost, it will stay, but it will be covered. Again, what do you mean by a capital letter and lower letter? As I mentioned before, T for tallness, okay, for the dominant. This is T, tallness, dominant, and T small for the shortness, recessive. So when I write T capital, T small, this is a hybrid. This is contain one dominant allele, which is T capital, and the other recessive allele, which is T small here. And this is the genotype. And here, this is the structure, which is tall. This is phenotype. Done? So we need to understand how the segregation, how the mating is happened. Okay? Inshallah, we will do it right now. So again guys, we will study how the F1 will segregate if we made these two, this one with this one. This is the first parent, and this is the other parent. After the segregation, we will form two gametes, T capital, T small, and here we will form also two gametes, T capital, T small. Okay? And after the mating here, we will get four offspring, T capital with T capital, T capital with T small, T capital, T small, and T small, T small. We want to read these offspring. This is T capital tall, tall, and this is T capital T small also tall, and this is the only short offsprings. To this point, I finished the first lesson. Inshallah, from the next lessons, we will work more on the hybridization on the F1 and F2 generation. Thank you, and please, next time, bring your notebook with you. Have a nice day.